Hello. Hello. Hey everybody, good morning. None of you know who I am, do you? Okay, so we'll start with that. You might have guessed by the slide up here, I'm with Health Talents International. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. I'm going to hit a couple of things. I'm going to hit, this will probably pop up the slide somewhere. I'm going to hit just the importance of missions in general, what God does through missions. Not only what God does on the trip, but also what God does within us. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we'll talk about Health Talents as well. What it is, why we think it works, what's important about it. So that's kind of the game plan. I always kind of like to start these with a little bit about who I am, because when I'm usually sitting out there and some dude just gets up and starts talking, I'm like, who is this? Who is this guy? Right, so we're gonna do that first, and then we'll get moving from there. By the way, I cannot believe my slides are up and running. I do this pretty regularly, and it never works in any church ever. So I'm pretty impressed with who so far. At least plugged it in, and everything sort of magically worked. So that's all for that. Okay, so the other guy in the middle is me. I have 3 boys. They're all married. They're all she was going to be here this morning. She's actually the rock star of the group, but she couldn't make it. As a matter of fact, I got to run back and help her with some things when I'm done with here. So my boys, my oldest, who is on the way you're looking at it, how are you looking at it? That's very confusing to me. On the left there, my oldest is an IT guy, my middle son's a doctor, my youngest son is a CPA. And so I always told my wife, man, if we could just have one more and have an attorney, we'd have killed it, right? We had everything covered, but we gave up after 3. So that's just a tiny bit about me. It doesn't really explain why I'm here, but we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. But I need to get some disclaimers out of the way first. So let's talk about the disclaimers. So disclaimers for me, you know those drug commercials you see on TV and everybody's happy, right? They're all like running or drinking a great meal with their friends or something like that. Everybody's just so wonderfully happy. And then in the background, they're telling you all the horrible things that could happen to you if you take those drugs, right? That's kind of what these are. So I got three disclaimers. I talked to Boo about this first one anyway. There's an above zero chance that I'm going to say something incredibly stupid. Okay, I don't do this for a living, really, right? And I haven't my whole career anyway. So I need your grace. And I have no idea where it's going to come or how it's going to come out, right? My brain, I got an ADHD brain that runs all over the place, and just words coming out of my mouth faster than my brain can keep up with what's going on. So there's no telling what's going to happen today, which I think should keep you awake, right? And who knows what disaster you might be able to encounter if you stay on this. So I just need your grace. So just a reminder of that. Now I mentioned a little bit of the other piece. I know ADHD is kind of an overused term. I personally think that. Brothers and sisters, I have ADHD, real life. I just do. All my teachers in school could tell you that. My drill sergeant could tell you that when I was in the Army. Everybody that's ever been involved with me could tell you that my brain runs all over the place. What that means for you is, from time to time, I'm just going to wander down some weird dirt road and suddenly realize I'm on a dirt road that goes to nowhere. How do I get out of this? And I'm going to have to stop for a minute and look at my notes. So if everything just totally goes silent up here, I haven't had a stroke. Lord willing. Class is not over, right? I just got lost and I got to turn around and drive back up this dirt road and get on the main highway that we're trying to get on. So you just need to be aware of that one as well. And another disclaimer, which is maybe a little more serious one. Yeah, I'm here to discuss missions, and I'm especially here to talk about HTI, and I've got some strong opinions on both of those topics, because I strongly believe that God calls us to be missionaries and ambassadors of His kingdom, no matter what our walk in life is, right? However, I want you to hear, church, that I also strongly believe there are many ways to do that, all right? This is just a tiny little piece, a tiny sliver, a tiny option. But you might hear me talk about it like it's the only thing on the planet, right? I don't want you to interpret it that way. I know there are many other ways to serve God's kingdom, and I'm just going to talk about one today. So, don't want you to mishear my passion for this as a belief that this is the way that it has to be done. Okay, so that's my last one. All right. Here I am on the dirt road. Let's talk about it. So, how did I get here? We'll have a little mission testimony to start with. So, one of those kids is mine. I bet you can guess which one. So, man, are we already shutting this thing down? Oh, okay. That's just so, can you say it? I didn't say something stupid already. No, I didn't say it. You're fine. You're fine. All right. So, how did we get here? So it started with an innocent question from that little boy right there, that little boy who is now a CPA and almost 30 years old. So one day, he comes to us, me, and he asked me, he said, "Dad, are we poor?" And I thought, well, that's a weird question to ask at this point in my life. Without going into too much detail, we were a lot of things, but church, one thing we were not was poor, okay? I know because I had been poor in my life, and we were not poor. And I said, well, son, why do you ask that? And he said, well, you know, it was spring break at the time, because all my friends are going to Europe, and we're not going anywhere for spring break. And my buddy, and I promise you this happened, because my buddies, they all live in Governor's Club. Well, Governor's Club is a gated community in Brentwood, Tennessee. And we don't have a gate in front of our neighborhood, so I figured we're poor. And so I thought about that and processed that, and here's what hit me. We had worked so hard to protect our children and to give our children the very best that we could. We had built such a bubble around our kids, they had no idea what the world was like. You know, in some ways, that's not all bad, right? You kind of want to protect them. But we had reached a point, especially with this little fella right here, that he actually thought his life was rough and that he was poor. You know, how had we done this, right? So that hit me pretty hard, and I talked to my wife about it. And my wife, Wendy, got all fired up and said, you know what? And I'm shortening this down, obviously. You know what we're going to do? We're going on a mission trip. We're taking these kids somewhere, and we're going to find out what life is like. And I'm like, hold on now. Let's just slow down. You know, maybe we should drive to a bad neighborhood or something. Maybe that's a better plan. Let's try that first and see if that, you know, let's not just go to a third world country. You know, that seems excessive. And we argued back and forth about this for a while, and then finally I had to put my foot down. And shortly after that, we went on a mission trip. Kind of how that happened. So next thing you know, I'm sitting in Honduras with my kids, which is kind of where that picture was taken. And I met this person right here. Okay, so this person, her name is Sabina Estrada, and we met her while we were on a well check in Honduras, right? So we're just checking on some members of the church. So she doesn't know it. I mean, she didn't know how old she was. I literally didn't know. She thought she was in her 80s, and I'm saying thought because Sabina passed this last year, but she thought she was in the 80s. She lived in the mountains of southern Honduras. You can tell she had a mud brick house. That's her kitchen, and she's been over there. She's working on her stove right there. Dirt floors, no doors, no running water, lived 100% off the land, and the proceeds for some bread that she made. She has no education, no savings to speak of, certainly no 401k, no government programs, nothing, right? By any measure that we would use, her life was hard, right? It was brutally hard. So that's where Sabina was. Sabina doesn't know it, but the Spirit used her to just turn my life upside down and blow it up. I don't know how else to describe it. Just wreck my life. In a good way, right? But still, just big old 4-car collision wreck kind of thing. Because it really messed with me. And here's why. See, we're checking on Sabina, right, to make sure she's okay, because she's living in such a destitute place and living her on her own. And while we were there, she made bread for us. She made coffee. She made tortillas. It's kind of funny. She found out at one point that Wendy, my wife, didn't know how to make tortillas, and she was absolutely appalled by that. How can a woman not know how to make tortillas? And everything stopped. And Wendy literally had to go inside and learn how to make tortillas before we could continue with the rest of our day. She loved my youngest son. She loved my youngest son mainly because my youngest son loved her bread. But she loved that boy, and she doted on him the whole time we were there. She emptied out everything she had in her kitchen to feed us, and stopped everything she was doing to feed us. So, you know, in my mind, she was probably the most hospitable person that I've ever met in my life. Forgive me, church. Alright, so why did that rock me so bad? So I'm looking at this sweet little woman who just cleared out everything she owned to feed these white people that showed up out of nowhere in the jungle, right? Where did these come from? Where did these people come from? Didn't matter where we came from. She fed us, she loved us, she gave us everything she had. So, why does it impact me so? Well, here's who I was. So, I lived in the right city. We lived in Nashville, Tennessee. Actually, lived in better than Nashville. We lived in Brentwood, Tennessee. If you know anything about it, that's the place you gotta live, right? My kids went to the right schools because I moved to the right school district to put them in the right schools. They lived in the absolute best school district in all of Tennessee. I had the right job, and I was moving up fast. I went to the right church, which is a great church, by the way, but it was the cool church, okay? And I taught class at that church, and I taught the right classes. Everything was right. And I was miserable. How is this possible? And I'm looking at this lady who's got nothing, just happy as a clam, right? And so, how am I so miserable? And I wrestled with that. I still wrestle with that. So, what happened was, spending time with Sabina started a conflict in me to try to understand why I, who have been given so much, could be so discontent, and why somebody with so little could be so full of contentment and joy, right? There's a wrestling match that took place. The Spirit started there. And here's what happened. See, church, what happened was I was introduced to someone who really trusted and depended on God. And I didn't know what that looked like. I got a slide here. Let's see. Yeah, y'all ain't never gonna be able to read that. Mark 12, 41 through 44. The story is quite familiar to us. I'll read this. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting the money in the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. And calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she gave out of her poverty, put in everything. But she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." Well, you kind of know who Sabina was, right? And by extension, you kind of know who I was. So, Sabina, the Lord introduced me to this woman, or one just like her, right? And by extension, the Lord helped me understand that I was the person that enjoyed showing up at church and just kind of giving out my wealth and moving on. That's who I was in the story, and it convicted me down to my core. Because here's the deal. See, I had always believed that I depended on Jesus. It's kind of like my son who thought we were poor, right? And he didn't really know. That's just what he thought. He had no idea. And I thought I trusted in God. And I needed to meet somebody who really trusted in God, who was really dependent on God. So God used this meeting to show me that I depended on me, that my faith was in me, not in Him. And it created a sense of responsibility in me, a conviction in me to kind of change the course of my life. We don't have time to talk about that, because that happened, this happened nearly 20 years ago. The course of my life changed. The decisions I made changed. The Lord used that moment that I don't believe I would have gotten if I'd have remained in the States. Probably so. He probably could have found somebody, but that's how He chose to put that conviction in me and use His Spirit to kind of give me a change of heart on who I needed to be for Him. So the question I ask myself all the time is, so if I'm the one that's giving gift out of wealth, but Jesus is commending someone else, what do I do about that? Right? How do I do about it? Because what I want is I want Jesus to commend me. Quite selfishly, that's what I want. And I want to be the one that He talks about. I don't want to be the So, that's one of our So that's me. What about others? I believe, church, that there's a version of my story that takes place every single time we get out of our comfort zone and go somewhere and serve. It impacts people in ways. There are stories probably throughout this church where that has happened, but I know that it's happened on every trip that I've ever been on. I've seen somebody's life change. And I think there's something to that. So we're going to hit a couple other verses here. This one's kind of tough. Matthew 25, 34 through 36. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance. The kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Y'all ever talk in this class? I know I'm not giving you a chance right now, right? I'm just going to rip it, right? But I'm just saying, if I stop talking and ask a question, would you consider answering that question? Is that something that happens in here? You sure you don't want to know what the question is first? When you read this, what jumps out at you when you read it? Anything in particular jump out? There's no wrong answer. Well, if there is, I'll tell you it's wrong. But no, there's no wrong answer here. What jumps out at you when you read it?
You did something.
You did something. Expand on that a little bit.
It says you gave me something to eat. You gave me something to drink. You invited me in. You clothed me.
There's kind of a hands-on feeling to this, isn't there? Right? There's sort of a roll up your sleeves and you went to work in some way. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else?
What did the people think that were on his left?
Yeah, they were going, when did we see?
Yeah.
Right? We didn't see. Yeah, and if you read the whole story, it just says, well, when we went through all these people, when you saw them, you served me. When you saw them and didn't serve them, you didn't serve me. Right? It's kind of the Michael Humphreys version of that story, but yeah. What else?
I was blessed by God. I used those blessings for others.
Right. Blessed by God and use those blessings for others. I agree with that. How about this? If you look at the list, it's addressing a lot of physical needs, isn't it? There's a lot of physical needs being addressed in there. I was hungry. I was sick. And there's some emotional needs as well, right? I'm a stranger. There's this feeling of somebody that's lonely. I'm in prison. But there's a lot of physical needs being addressed through here. That's something that jumps out to me. It's also focusing on the least, right? You're talking about criminals and hungry and strangers. It's typically the least that all this is around. And again, a lot of other scriptures about a lot of the ways we serve, so I'm not saying this is it. But this is something, right? This is kind of important. This is Jesus himself talking, saying, hey, when you did this, you were doing this for me, right? But for me, it forces me to ask a question. The question is, how often am I actually doing these things, right? Because to me, it seems there's an expectation that I'm going to do the same. I believe that our Father expects active service, okay? And now for me personally, I can tell you way back when I talk about when I was doing everything right, I was a great giver, okay? I had a job where I was making a lot of money, and I at least tithed off that job, and I was very self-satisfied going, I am doing my part for the kingdom, okay? That is all I did, right? I got up, I wrote a check. I didn't write a check, right? It was one of those automatic deposit things. It just pulls out and goes in. I didn't have to go through the activity of writing a check. And I believe strongly that was enough. Now then, I think giving is incredibly important, right? But I think there's more to service than cutting a check. The thing that, for me, what happened to me is I realized what I was doing was hiding behind my wallet. That's the term that I gave to myself. If I could hide behind my wallet and just shoot my wallet out, you know, and let my wallet do the work for me, then I don't really have to do anything. I can live my life however I want. And that's kind of how I approached it. Just a little confession to you, church. That's how I was behaving. Let's look at another one. See what's going on here, what service is about. Yeah, I can't even read that one. I'm going to have to turn around and look at it this way. Can I read it this way? Yeah. So we know this story. There's a little gap in here, but this is where Jesus decides to wash the feet of his disciples. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around them. And then there's a gap in there because that's where Peter goes, yeah, you know, washing my feet. You know, and Jesus, you know, they had the whole argument. Next thing you know, Jesus is like, yeah, just dunk me in water. Yeah, and Jesus is like, calm down, Peter. We don't need the whole thing, right? We're just washing feet. So we're jumping past that, and this is where he finished. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. And here's Jesus talking. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Okay, so what jumps out at you when you read these verses?
It's flipped. Everything is backwards from what you expect it to be.
Everything's weird, right? Yeah, it's all upside down. You think about that, because if you look at the very first line up there, Jesus knew that that the Father had put all things under his power. So all things are within Christ's control. And what does he do? He goes and washes feet. He physically washes people's feet. Everything's weird and upside down. What else?
I think both verses show a servant attitude, servant heart.
They both verses kind of go to this servant heart, and really the servant heart and what that kind of looks like, right? Jesus is giving an example of what it looks like. Okay? What else?
He says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. It's almost like you might not have really known what this looked like before, but now I've shown you, now you don't have any reason to do anything differently than what you can show.
Yep, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. So verse 17 really jumps out to me. That's one that really hits me. And that's what you just touched on. You will be blessed. You know these things. You'll be blessed if you do them. Anything else?
I was thinking it was kind of like you were saying a while ago about, you know, you were giving of your money and everything like that, and you felt like that was enough. But this shows that, you know, even the most high can go below to serve, and not in a giving way as far as monetary, but in a service way. Like, he was so high and he went so low.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you the mic and let you knock this out. That's dead on. I think both of these verses that I'm going through, this one has obviously a hands-on feel to it as well, right? How did Jesus serve? By getting down on his knees and washing dirty, stinky feet, right? There's a physical act that's going on here, right? And that's something, again, for me, I avoided that and didn't want to see that. Verse 17 really hit me. Again, this is just me. When I read that verse forever and ever and ever, what I miss on that is I really believe, well, yeah, sure, I'm going to be blessed. I'm going to be rewarded when the Lord comes and he's going to set things right. Right? And I think there's some truth in that. But I think I kind of undersold that verse because I think Christ is also telling us if you do this, you'll be blessed right now. Just like, and I look at my wife, I am so blessed to have known Sabina and visited her many times. I mean, she's a great mentor in my life, you know, and I would not have met her and been challenged the way I was challenged unless I had decided to go and serve. Well, the honest answer is unless my wife had decided to go serve and made me go with her, right? That's kind of the honest answer, but still, I was blessed by that physical service, getting out and doing something. Okay, so I have a strong belief now, church, that God uses service to bless the server just like the served, all right? I cannot ever remember a time where I have been on a trip to serve others where I wasn't blessed and everybody that went on that trip walked away going, I think I got way more out of it than I gave. And I think we miss that part, especially if we haven't been, right? We don't have time, we're super busy, we got a million things going on, the world is constantly telling you that you don't have time to do this, and then when you go do it, you go, wow, I got way more out of this than I was able to put into this. How is this possible? Well, because it's the way Christ works, right? Everything's upside down and weird. You go and work and you get more out of it. Go figure. So, holy monkey. Let's get moving. I'm going to skip a few points. Let's talk about health talents. Okay. I just kind of went through. I wanted to hit this stuff because I want you to hear a story, my testimony a little bit on what missions can do for the individual. But I also wanted you to see there's something about getting out, rolling your sleeves up, and helping others that's super important. I'm going to give you a super quick, tight summary of the big point I'm skipping, which is, church, this whole world, and I touched on it a little bit, but this whole world is designed to distract us and keep us off point. I mean, I completely believe that. Right? And so it's really, really hard when we live day to day in one spot to pull out of that and get rid of that distraction, setting aside and going, you know what, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to spend a week serving people that I don't know in a place that I don't understand with phone service that isn't very good is one of the best resets that I have ever had in my life. That's why even before I got into this role, my wife and I went twice a year, and it was to serve, yes, but it was selfish because what it did was it helped reset me every time I would go. Because within about 6 months, I'm right back into that guy that's just trying to make a whole bunch of money and all that kind of silliness, right? The stuff that doesn't count, because that's where the world directs me. So these trips, this one, many others, they help you find the Lord again and hear the Lord, because it puts you in a different spot. I also believe when you do that, it enables you to serve a little better when you get back home, because again, you're more intentional and you can think a little clearer about what's going on, and you see need around you just like you saw somewhere else. So let's talk about this actual mission. I mean, that's why I'm here, right? I spent the whole time talking about the importance of mission in general, but let's talk about this. So, this is our mission. This is what we do. We proclaim the gospel of Christ through healing and teaching. And we got that from a few places. There's this one that we just did, right? Matthew 25. I was sick, and you look after me. Right? We kind of take that to heart. We want to work with the sick. We want to do everything we can to serve the sick. But there's another one, Matthew 9:35. In the context of this, he had just done a couple of larger miracles before this. I say larger, specific miracles Matthew goes through, and you kind of hit some of these miracles. And then after that, he traveled through all the towns and villages in that area, teaching in the synagogues, and announcing the good news about the kingdom, and he healed every kind of disease and sickness. So he taught, but he also met physical needs, right? Both of those things took place, and that's kind of how Health Talents approaches it as well. 4 different angles here. So there's the physical piece, that's obvious, right? We'll get into even more of that in a minute. There's also that spiritual piece. We have ministers on staff. We also support, the number goes up and down, but, right now, very consistently, we're supporting about 27 churches in Guatemala, and there's another 60 or so that we just kind of work with off and on as needed. And when I say support, we don't do money, we don't have their, we don't do their preachers. They are self-sufficient churches. Well, how we support is through education and training and teaching. We'll bring teams down and help them do leadership training, do things like that for the preachers in the area. Give them resources. We are there to support those churches. We'll get into that a little more in just a second as well. But we also do the emotional piece. We have counselors on staff. That's in Guatemala, that's desperately needed. So we look at how can we serve in all of these areas. All right, so where is this? You see that little star right there? That's Guatemala City. That's where you land. And you see that bottom arrow that's pointed up. That's where our clinic is. That doesn't look very far, and it's really not, but it's about 3.5 hours in a car. And that top one up there is where I said the bottom was clinic. That's actually hospital. The top one is the clinic. And that's about 3.5 hours as well. Even though it's a little further, it's a little bit easier to get there. So anyway, central Guatemala, that bottom one's closer to the coast. Just as hot as it could possibly be. The one that's actually not that far away, but it's up in the mountains. It's like the climate of Colorado all the time. It's just an absolutely fabulous little climate. There's a picture of our hospital. And so if you look at the one with the courtyard in it, that's where the teams stay when they go down there. And the other building is the actual hospital proper. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything on that hospital. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, here's a few things. So what's our hospital like? It's got 47 beds, is that right? 3 dental rooms, 3 operating rooms, sterilization, we got a pharmacy, 70 employees work here full time. That's everything. We have doctors, nurses, all the staff you can imagine to run a hospital all the way down to maintenance and everything else. So it's a pretty large operation. We do physical therapy out of this. We do counseling out of here. We run 13 surgical trips a year right here. We'll hit that. I think I got a slide on hand. We do. Here's a couple shots of the operating room. I think we put this in just to prove to people, yes, we actually have operating rooms and surgeons that go down. I don't know how else to describe a church. It's a legitimate hospital, right? I mean, we run surgery through this. Now it's open year round. I'll get into the caseload in a second, but we run 13 surgical trips annually. There's all kinds. You have general surgeons, GYN, ortho, eye, urology, plastics, a couple other things, and we're running dental with every trip in conjunction with this as well. Plus we have dentists on staff also, so they're constantly around. So we do 4 to 5 mobile clinics a year. So how does that work? You can see we partner with some of the schools there. So here's how, if you think of it this way, so the medical care in Guatemala is sketchy at best, right? And so you have, especially up in the mountains, and so you have all these areas in the mountains where there's basically no medical care. And so we do these mobile clinics kind of going up like that, and they act as a feeder. We'll feed, cases down into our clinic in Chi-Chi, and then from there, we have doctors that will begin to determine, is this something that can be treated, or do they need to have some sort of surgery done? And if they need a surgery, we'll schedule that. And we schedule it out based on the surgeons that we have coming down from the state. So unlike here, if you need surgery, you might get that in 2 weeks. Well, in Guatemala, you might get that in 6 months. Okay? But that's still better than they're going to get it, right? Anywhere else. But so we use this system to kind of funnel this all the way down into our hospital. So that's kind of why we have this clinic up here, and we do these mobile clinics. It also gives us an opportunity to work with a lot of the students from the universities. They can help. A lot of the medical students, nursing students, things like that from these different universities go and help do a lot of the procedures. Talked about the dental and the dental pharmacies we have there. So here's an idea of, as I'm rambling, an idea of what that actually looks like when a year's over. So that board, I think, is just neat. Every time we do a surgery during a week, we put their name on the board and we spend the rest of the week praying for them. So that gives you an idea on that particular week how many surgeries we ran. And you can look at the numbers there, over 20,000 consults in 2024, over 10,000 dental procedures, 802 surgical procedures, 1,300 well checks, and we brought over 650 volunteers down there. All right, so it's an operation. There's a lot going on. Those well checks are interesting because we actually do a thing for the health of children. Is that the last get up and we're done, or is that the warning bell? How does that work here?
It's like 5 minutes.
Oh, we're golden. Okay. Not really, but we're gonna make it so. So that 1,300, this ABC and prenatal. So one of the things they realized a long time ago is, well, how can we? It's nice that we can do these surgeries, but how can we reduce the number of surgeries that we do? Right? Well, we need to give medical care to younger people to help with that. So this is one of the things that we do. So you can actually sponsor a child or a family. It's like $40 a month, and if you do, we make sure they get clean food and water. Their family does. They get clothing, educational expenses. But the big piece is this medical. We do well checks on them and their families every year. Right? How are they doing? We also work with the churches. This sounds kind of weird, but it's true. They have to go to church, okay? If they're not going to church, that's fine. We're not mad at them, but we're not going to support them with this particular program, okay? So if they are in church and they're working with the church and their family's working with the church and they're coming to the well checks like they're supposed to for their medical care, we will work with that child all the way up basically through high school. And the crazy thing is, like when you go to Guatemala and you go to our facility there, and we'll have all the staff in, and you'll go, hey, how many people here were part of this program? It's like 40% of our staff who are now nurses or doctors or things like that were part of this, right? And man, there's so many amazing stories of how he basically reclaimed the family because it was $40 a month, which seems like nothing to us, but for them it was huge. So that's one of the things that we do. That's what those well checks are about. This scholarship's the same thing. This guy right here, I mean, he's a person that we gave a scholarship to. Next thing you know, he's a doctor. And there's so many other stories like that. Because what we want to do is we want to, again, yes, the Americans need to be down there, but we want to equip Guatemalans so they can take care of themselves, right? And so what we do with these scholarships is help them predominantly in the medical field, but we also give scholarships for engineers and other things as well. Okay, quickly, NET. This is a big one. The reason I say this is a big one is because I need your help with this one for sure. Before COVID, we would take about 12 people down every year, and it's like an internship for people that wanted to learn. What does it mean? MET stands for Medical Evangelism Training. What does it mean to use my skills for Christ in the mission field? How does that work? Well, we would bring them down. We would bring kids down. They spend 6 or 8 weeks with our team down there to learn what that was like. COVID comes along. Now we're getting maybe 3 kids. I mean, it changed just like that. So we're looking for kids that are willing to do this. And it's getting a little better. But if you know somebody that's a young person, they're in school, they're a nurse, they're pre-med, something like that, and they're kind of curious about this, man, put them in touch with us. They get language training while they're down there, and they get hands-on training from some of the best people that you're ever gonna meet. Okay, right here, work with roughly 60 churches. We do the ABC thing. We do prenatal through our churches. We do clinics through our churches. We do a ton of leadership training. And we need your help partner with us. Boom, I got it done in under 5 minutes. Had 5 minutes left, didn't I? I do have some kind of handouts up here that I'll put somewhere. I'll get with Boo and find out where he wants to put those. And it just kind of a little more information on each one of these areas. Quickly before we walk out, any questions you might have about the mission that we missed or that I missed? There's zero chance I explained it that well. Absolutely zero chance. All right, well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to shed a tear with you. My wife would be so happy that I did that. She just loves it when I cry. So don't tell her. If you run into her, don't tell her I did it. Thanks, church. I appreciate it.